Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob, and he's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Joe, how's it going today?
It's going pretty well. We got a lot of sports going on. Happy for opening day to start up here too, to get some baseball to go with the March Madness, and then the Masters coming up in April. It's a great time for the weather to be changing, Rob. It's a good time.
Oh, it is. It's insane how much there is going on. I don't know how everybody's keeping up with all of it. I know I've had to miss a lot of different games and things that I would probably really enjoy to watch, but there's just too much to keep track of. So we will obviously be, talking mostly, completely about the Reds here, but mostly about opening day. We're going to finish up spring training discussions, talk about some cuts, some trades, a lot of things that the Reds have done over the last week, which they have been busy, to say the least. But we'll always do this. We'll start with our question of the day, which is going to be, what are you predicting for the Reds' first series of the year? 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, 0-3. Ugh, that would be pretty depressing, especially against a team like this. But we will go over that here, and then Joe and I will each, kind of give our thoughts on that series as well. So make sure that you guys stick around towards the end, because that's what we will be doing. But we'll be starting right now with spring training. It's over. The Reds started off really hot, actually, in those first week and a half or so. But they kind of fizzled out with all the different injuries, and I think they were just kind of giving guys more time to figure things out and whatnot. So, again, spring training results really don't matter. I mean, if that was the case, then the Orioles would be the World Series champions. I think they won 23 games or something like that, which is kind of insane.
They might be.
But,
they might be.
yeah, that one's the
Never
one
know.
that could be true, actually. But yeah, so they start out hot. Here's kind of just some stats to note real quick. CES batted .333, 5 home runs, 14 RBIs. Biggest thing for me with him was 7 Ks and 3 walks. Luke Maile, .375, 4 home runs, 11 RBIs. Spence, .340, 4 home runs, 12 RBIs. Stu batted .333, which was awesome to see. Ellie, .280, 2 home runs, 21 strikeouts, which was a lot, but second on the team with 8 walks. Jonathan India batted .393. Hunter Green had 19 strikeouts with 10 walks. Struggled a little bit at times. And then Alexis Diaz, 10.57 ERA. Joe, we're each going to pick one person. Who stood out to you most, good or bad?
You know me. I don't really care about spring training stats, so I'm gonna stick with something we've said. I know it's gonna be repeating what we said, but I was really impressed with Stu Fairchild. I mean, I know injuries made it easier for him to make the team, but the dude had to hit this spring to make the team initially, and he
Before
did. He did
injuries.
hit pretty well. He's gonna be huge for this. He's gonna be big for this team when we have lefties pitching. Probably won't get too many bats against righties, and that's fine. But I think it's good because we have so many good left-handed hitters in the outfield. We need him to be there, and we don't really have a fifth outfielder right now that is going to continuously play there just because of the injuries and how things are moving around. So
Yeah.
he's going to have to play a lot of innings, and maybe he will get more at bats against right-handers until we fill that spot, which probably should come in the next couple days here.
Yeah, we'll find out here. We are recording as our normal is going to hopefully be Sundays or Mondays generally. And so there's not been another move. We'll get into the roster stuff here, like Joe's kind of alluding to. But yeah, it was really good to see Stu do as well as he did. The person I'm going to point out is just Alexis Diaz. They gave him kind of in that last game a normal kind of closing situation to get him ready. That's generally what they do for the last 5 games or so when they're getting everybody ready. And he just struggled a lot this spring training. I know spring training stats, again, we'll reiterate this probably every single year, but it doesn't really matter. They're mostly working on specific things, but I know in your last tune-up game, generally you're not working on stuff you're pitching like you normally would. So just something to keep an eye on, an eye out on. I'm not overly worried or anything. I didn't go back and see what his spring training stats for last year or anything were, because that would be that'd be unnecessary. But I will say that it is worth noting. Pretty much all of our pitchers honestly struggled, but again, I think that's kind of ubiquitous amongst most MLB players as they're kind of getting ramped up for the season. Montas and Green looked a lot better in their last starts. So, we'll have to see how that goes. But We'll move on from spring training because we're done. We're done with spring training. It's so exciting. We got real baseball coming up. The Reds had to make a move. Joe and I were talking about this with all the different infield injuries and suspensions. I really did wonder. I was like, man, like, are they gonna really stick with Eric Gonzalez as their next guy? Like, he really was the only guy left on the available players list for them to bring up, with Tony Kemp and Josh Harrison getting cut. So the Reds went out, and instead of bringing back Josh Harrison, which is still a bit of a surprise to me, they actually got somebody better than I would have expected this late in spring training. They traded Chris McElvain, like a 26, 25-year-old, somewhere around there. I think maybe actually 24, relief pitcher. Sorry, pretty much kind of a nobody at this point for the Reds. No offense to him, but they went out and got former All-Star Santiago Espinal. I watched a video just kind of to get an idea of who he was, and how Blue Jays fans felt about him. He's a career 273 batter with 11 home runs, 15 stolen bases. He's apparently an amazing glove. He's an okay contact hitter, but he hits for basically no power. So that is something to kind of note. He's definitely a solid backup. He has options left, which is, I think, part of the reason why they traded for him, is that once everybody's healthy, hopefully they can send him down if they need to. He was a fan favorite who looked like he was on the way out regardless. Like, they didn't think he was going to make the opening day roster, even though a lot of people, it sounds like in Toronto, felt like he should. But apparently they just got a lot of young guys that he was blocking the way for. So to Nick Krall going out there and getting, I think, a guy who will generally be a positive war guy, Joe, for the Reds, especially in the situation that they're in. And he goes in, and I think it's the only spring training game he got with the Reds, maybe two of them. And his first hit is an RBI single. So, positive vibes there, without a doubt.
Well, Rob, you're the ultimate optimist, because I was on some Blue Jays message boards and on Twitter, and they do not like him very much. So I guess we have different opinions there.
Oh, no, that's not my opinion. That's just what I watched two different videos from people, and they were like talking about how he's a fan favorite.
Boy. I don't think that's to be true if you're supposed to believe the message boards and the Twitter space, but that could lie. I mean, so they wanted him out because he was blocking people. I think they understood that his All-Star appearance was kind of fluky. I mean, to be honest,
sure.
But we're going to welcome him with the Reds. He's going to be a fan favorite with the Reds, even though he's not going to play a lot. He's going to be a guy that I love personally, because I do like guys who hit for contact. Power is overrated, in my opinion, especially these days when we have guys like Kyle Schwarber hitting in the 100s and like at the top of the lineup. Like, what are we doing here? This isn't baseball. But no, I think for a backup, he's going to be really good to play multiple positions in the infield, to be a good fielder. And also, you can move the runners over. I think you can slot him into the lineup a couple times a day, or a couple times a week. And I think he can be really, really good for this team. So this was a masterclass move, because McElvain was a non-starter. Like, he was never going to do anything for us, non-starter. Yeah. Watch, he'll go to the Blue Jays and he'll be like an all-star next year, and that's great. But for us, it was never going to happen. So I love this move. I love Santiago Espinal. I hope the Blue Jays fans that I saw were wrong, and hopefully the ones that you saw were right, Rob. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, that is really weird. I mean, I watched two different YouTube videos, and they were like sports talk. Like one of them has like 24,000 subscribers on YouTube too, and they were like their comment section was, "Yeah, we're gonna miss him so much," and I was just like, maybe it's just this group of fans that really liked him. I have no idea. I will say that he hasn't hit well over the last 2 years. Like, he's not been bad, but he's been your average backup. And I think for what the Reds want, I mean, truthfully, if he's batting eighth, because I think they're going to use Will Benson in that 9-hole in like a second leadoff type role. So I think eight's kind of like where your worst hitter is going to be nowadays. I believe that he's a great 8 hitter, because I think he can help turn over the lineup. And most importantly, when Ellie does get those days off, he's going to be a great glove. We're not going to have to worry about his defense at arguably the most important defensive position in baseball. I would say it's that there and catcher. But it's a really nice trade. Again, a masterclass by Nick Krall to get an opening day starter type guy. I don't know if he would have made the club with everybody healthy, but he's at least a nice backup option for them to have as we go through this season. And he's also, last thing I'll mention, he's also in arbitration. So the Reds basically got a guy who could be in their organization, honestly, for the next like 3 years for a complete no name. So very, very well done by Crawl. I will give him that credit. We'll have to see how things pan out. We're going to move on to roster cuts and just the roster in general. I'm going to give you guys the fastest breakdown of this that I possibly can. So be ready to keep up. Well, I guess we'll go into final cuts first. Mike Ford, unfortunately, gets cut, mostly just unfortunately because he did actually hit very well. He had 2 home runs in one game. Like he was smacking the crap out of the ball. I think he finished with like a 400 plus average, but they just didn't feel like I think that he fit what they were needing right now. That being said, he does go down to AAA instead of actually just getting cut. So he will, theoretically be available for them if they end up deciding that they do want him. The big one is Tony Santillan. And the only reason I say big one is not because of Joe remembering my apparent love affair for him many years ago, but more just because he had 15 strikeouts in 8 innings pitched, so almost 2 strikeouts per inning, which is insane, by the way. And he only had 1 walk. He was masterful. And I think I read a quote where he talked about how he wanted to show that he could still do it to himself as well after coming back, multiple different injuries and things like that. This is about as well as he could have looked. And the Reds have already said that like he's going to be in the mix for the bullpen. I think should anybody who they already have up there struggle, he's going to come right up. So good on him. Good on Mike Ford. If those are your 2 next guys up, guy 27 and guy 28 on this roster right now, you're feeling pretty good about yourself.
Yeah, if you need any more evidence that spring training doesn't matter, this is it, because these were the 2 best players, the 2 MVPs, the MVP pitcher and the MVP pitcher, position player pitcher, sorry. Ford was hitting the crap out of the ball. He deserves a lot of credit for that. Like I said, I don't think that's sustainable for the regular season.
No.
That's I don't think it was a position of need necessarily for us. It's good to have that option in AAA because we have a good farm system, but we are pretty thin in AAA, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. And Santillan, I was just extremely impressed. I know the bullpen numbers were kind of a crunch, but there were some guys who make in the roster who did not pitch half as good as him. And then we talked about Diaz, but even some other ones that I felt like, maybe if he was a lefty, he'd be in the bullpen, no brainer, because we loved having so many lefties. But
apparently
he's a righty, and hopefully he gets a big chance later on in the season. We know more injuries will happen. We're the Reds, it happens, so he'll be up, and hopefully he can pitch well for us.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think like you said, I think it's important to note these are spring training stats. But it is interesting the dichotomy between him and then like Nick Martinez looked just as good as he did. Obviously, he was going to make the team no matter what, but you have to remember that's what's great about baseball. At least in my opinion, I know a lot of people say it's way too long, but baseball takes time to accumulate stats. You can have a 2-week period where you're absolutely insanely good, but then the rest of the season you suck, right? So there's a lot more to look at than just specific stats over a small portion like this. But let's dive into
Aristides Aquino.
Yeah, he is literally the prime example for Reds fans. I mean, good Lord. The most torrid September I think I've ever seen from a Reds hitter, and he still sucks. Very sad to see. Really thought he had a chance. But we will move on here. I'm going to start listing them. We're going to go, just in order by position. Starting pitchers, our opening day rotation is going to be Frankie Montas, Hunter Green, Nick Martinez, which was a bit of a surprise to me that they put him third. We'll talk about that later. Andrew Abbott, Graham Ashcraft, Alexis Diaz, Lucas Sims, TJ Antone, Emilio Pagan, Fernando Cruz, Brent Suter, Buck Farmer, and Justin Wilson. Those are all of our pitchers. I was a little surprised to see some of those. Joe, any thoughts on any of those guys before we move on to position players?
Yeah, I think Cruz was probably the most surprising to be in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Just given the arms we have, we do have some injuries, but like we're setting Santillan down, and I think he's a better pitcher than Cruz personally.
Yeah.
But also the rotation favoring the veterans. Like we knew Frankie Montas for the last couple of weeks was going to be the number 1 starter. I still would have had Hunter Green. Let the confidence flow.
Yep.
There's some conspiracy theories out there. They wanted him to miss the second series of the season because of certain bats we'd be facing, which we'll get to next week when we talk about the series. But for Green, because if he doesn't start opening day, then he misses the next series. what they were saying. So
Really?
that's
They don't
that's
want
a
him to pitch in
that's a
Philadelphia,
conspiracy I've
huh?
seen. That's a conspiracy I saw on Red's Twitter. So I forget which one tweeted out. I'm sorry, I would give credit if I remember, but they said like, oh, he would miss the bats in Philadelphia, so we're gonna have him get on a better start. But I was very surprised the veteran like Andrew Abbott was so good for us last year, and he's
Oh,
our
I
four
know.
starter. I don't think he's actually the four starter. I think they just kind of wanted to move veterans up to start the year to eat some innings, maybe. I don't know, but that was the thing that surprised me the most is like I was going into the year thinking it was Green and then Abbott 1 and 2, and then Montas would eat some innings
Yeah.
at this three starter, and then Ashcraft and Lodolo would fill in, and it's different. I think it's fine. I think especially with playing the Nationals the first series, which we'll break down here in a little bit, like hypothetically, all these guys should have good outings against the Nationals lineup, in my opinion. So it's okay, just veteran presence, and then Cruz making the bullpen. I think was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I will say, we haven't seen Brent Suter pitch in a while, so I was a little surprised that there wasn't an injury designation for him. But again, maybe I just missed it. Justin Wilson also got lit up in his only outing for spring training, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. But yeah, I figured Buck Farmer and Fernando Cruz, one of them would get pushed out for Santillan, but I think that they have like a good meld of those guys, and I think again, last year they just really felt like they fell off mostly because of so many innings being eaten. So I think that also plays into this starting pitching decision. I will admit I wasn't expecting Nick Martinez to start in that opening series at all. So very interesting there to say the least. But yeah, I'll add one thing to the Andrew Abbott thing, not to repeat things, but I did. I thought it was like a fever dream where I think it was Charlie Goldsmith tweeted out a quote from David Bell where it was like how he was really proud of how Abbott was not only working on his stuff, because that's what you're either working on your stuff for spring training or working on making the roster. And it said that he was proud of how Abbott had worked on his stuff while balancing working on fighting for a roster spot. And I almost threw up in my mouth. I cannot believe that he was even not like, in what world is he not being considered for your opening day rotation? I mean, I will go down there and fight somebody over something that stupid. I mean, that is truly one of the dumbest things I've heard all year. There's no shot in hell that he should have been anything other than guaranteed you're making the rotation, my dude. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry. That like seriously made me ill because I reread it this morning. I was like, I genuinely thought that this was fake.
You're not wrong. I think I like David Bell. I would I give him like a B as a manager, maybe
Sure.
like not the greatest in the league. Had some rough moments, but his knowledge of pitching is just so out of this world different than I guess I have. I mean,
Same.
I get like the righty lefty matchups all the time, but he like really forces the righty lefty matchups a lot for the
Mm-hmm.
pitchers, the bullpen usage. And the guy that was your best pitcher last year and did have some arm fatigue at the end of the year, but he's still young.
He was
Like that's fine.
great. Yeah.
You like I unless he's just doing coach speak, we're like, oh, everyone has to everyone has to fight for their roster spot, which again, coach speak is sometimes stupid too. I just don't understand that whatsoever. We're gonna have a lot of points this year where we probably complain about David Bell. I still like him. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
nature of being a
There are
fan here, but
way worse
it's just
managers out there, to be clear.
well, it's not his fault. Like for me, the Reds kind of collapsed after he got the contract extension last year.
Mm-hmm.
Never give a contract extension when you're rolling. Like let it be. So like incentivize type of thing. And it's not his fault they decided to do that. I don't think, but it's just one of those things where hopefully he gets it together this year. I just that comment I saw that too, Rob, and I was just kind of like he's definitely doing coach speak where that
That
actually it's
has to
not what
be.
he means. There's no way.
Yeah, no, it has to be. Like I said, I agree with you. I just wanted to bring that up because I felt like that was pretty noteworthy. But we'll move on into the position players. We are not doing three catchers this year, so we're not going to have a wasted catcher spot on the roster. It's just going to be Luke Maley and Tyler Stevenson. Infielders, Jamer Candelario, Ellie De La Cruz, CES, Espinal, Indy, and then apparently they're considering Steer an infielder as well as an outfielder right now, based on their comments of what they're looking for this last spot in the roster. We'll talk about that here in a second. So you can count Steer there because it seems like they kind of are to a certain degree. Then you got Will Benson, Stu Fairchild, Jake Fraley, and Nick Martini. I'm going to go out on the record. I'm going to say Joe agrees that I will need to drink out of a shoe for Nick Martini making the roster. There are caveats to that. I'm not going to defend it. It is what it is. I never thought he was a bad player, to be clear. I've always liked him, but I just didn't think without injuries and everything that he would actually have a spot on this roster. So it is noteworthy that this is the first time that Nick Martini in his entire career, he is 33 years old, will be making an opening day roster. It is not only that, it's the first time he will be playing meaningful baseball, meaning being at the MLB level in April or May. He has never been up before June. So keep that in mind as he is on the roster and going to be getting a lot of meaningful at-bats. We'll have to see what that ends up meaning for this team. But are there any extra thoughts? I wanted to give mine on him real quick, and then I got one other one.
I'm glad you're sticking to it with the shoe. I think that's great. Good for content here. For me, like this is kind of crazy, but because there's a couple injuries, like this means that like if they weren't those injuries, he would have been battling for the last spot still. Like he would have been, sure, because we have one spot open right now. He would have been like player number 27 or 28 or whatever. Yep. That's what's surprising to me is like they like him that much. I don't mind him being on the team. I hope he plays well. And it's our opening day lineup is way better than it was last year where it was a mess. Oh yeah, to be quite honest. But no, I think this is a good crew to have hitting wise. Obviously not as good as it could be. Some of the depth is gone. We need some of these guys to start the season hot. That includes, when we get to the lineup, I'll talk more specifically about some of the guys. But I think, you need Ellie to really start the season hot.
Yep.
Because I think he's really important, especially with Friedel out with the average, and Marte being out as well. I think you have to lean on that. You can't have a guy striking out with guys on base. So for me, that's really important to me to start the year. But it's a good group of players. We'll just see how far they can go before some of these other guys get back. Is kind of the big thing.
Well, and we'll hope and pray that there are no more injuries. Because good Lord, I don't know how many more we could truly afford on this team. But the last guy that I did want to bring up is I wanted to give a quick shout out to India, mostly just because through all this stuff, he's just been the consummate pro. Man, he has said all the right things. He has done all the right things. He has been willing to play first base, left field, second base. Like, them giving him the extension that they did was shocking to me. I truly thought they were going to trade him. These injuries may truly change the entire trajectory of his career, because if he continues to show what he's showing, they're going to continue to give him at bats. He will continue to be the main guy on this roster, and they've already said like he is the leader in the clubhouse too. So there's a real world where even with all these young guys coming up and everything else, that India may just be the guy who gets to stick around because he's doing it right, and he's still going to be starting an opening day now, regardless of what else is happening. So I want to give him a shout out. He hit well. He's played defensively pretty well. I do wonder what his long-term future looks like with this team, but I think that if he can come out hot and really kind of carry this team through the early portion of the season, like I think he can, there's a real world where this 4-month span could truly just, he could end up being the guy who everybody thought he could be for the Reds, which I think is cool. So, we've got one last spot open on this roster. There are 25 guys. No longer is it only 25. You get 26. 13-13 is generally the split. I would be, with Santillan going down, it pretty much guarantees that it's going to be a position player. It'd be really dumb for David Bell to not take that 13th position player. But apparently they're looking at outfield, which is surprising to me. Like I said, I really thought that Steer was pretty much an outfielder now. Like, he was the left fielder. I'm 99% sure he's going to be starting in left field on opening day. But the options for the team right now go like this. The only people who are still on the 40-man roster that are outfielders are Bubba Thompson, Jacob Hartubisi, and Rhys Hines. I hope I got the Hartubisi right. I'm pretty sure that's right. But, I'm almost certain that Rhys Hines isn't going to make it. He's not ready yet at all, at least in my mind. They just kept him on the 40-man so he wouldn't get drafted in the, the something draft in the middle of June.
Rule 5.
Rule 5, thank you. I knew there was a 5 in there. Rule 5 draft. Hartubisi and Bubba Thompson are, I think, the more interesting and more likely options. It's going to depend on if they want a lefty bat or a righty bat. That's literally going to be, I think, the entire decision right there between the two. Both of them play decent defense. Bubba Thompson's a little faster. I think Hartubisi actually has a little bit more pop in his bat, but I'd have to go back and really look because it seemed like Bubba Thompson was hitting the absolute crap out of the ball during spring training. So maybe he's just never gotten a chance to really show off his power because he is still pretty young. The other options, guys that they know, Tony Kemp and Josh Harrison. Josh Harrison would be if they decide that they wanted another infielder, even after they went out and got Espinal. Tony Kemp obviously can play outfield as well as second base and potentially third, but I don't know how strong his arm is. I haven't really watched him in a long time, to be honest with you. I think if Kemp doesn't re-sign, I think that may be what they're waiting on, to be honest with you, because they still have not made a move as of right now. Last thing is, I've heard trade or they're waiting for somebody to get cut to see if they can maybe pluck somebody off the waiver wire. That wouldn't surprise me at all. There are normally a lot of decent players actually that get cut and move down to AAA. When I say decent, I mean like quadruple A guys who you could kind of need on your roster in a situation like this. So I think the Reds are just kind of biding their time. They're going to find their best option. I really would personally prefer it be another infielder. But I guess with Steer, you kind of have that wiggle room. So, especially just for me, to be honest with you, Joe, it's because I just feel like the middle infield is still lacking. Like you could have one more player there. I think Tony Kemp personally would be perfect. I don't know why they haven't just gone out and gotten him already, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not too upset with it being another outfielder. I think actually that's probably the call I would make too. I think
Okay.
Spears can play both. That's fine. As you know, as you feel the same way, like Martini being on the roster is fine. I don't know how well that's going to go as your fifth outfielder right now. So
Yeah.
I kind of think the comments make me think they're going to be taking a look at who gets cut more than anything.
Yeah.
They sent Thompson down really early in spring, so that would be surprising to bring him back up, but other than just like I guess we've had injuries. I'm looking for a guy who can play center field very, very well
Yes.
defensively. Maybe has some speed, can add to that. That's what I'm looking for personally. We saw in the past David Bell would take Nick Castellanos out of games because he didn't like his defense. We don't really have a guy who's really good defensive center field right now with Friedel being out. So that's what
Yeah.
I would do. I'd wait for the cuts, get someone who can cover that ground, especially our ballpark. Center field doesn't matter, but in a lot of ballparks, there's a lot of space to cover. You think about like Arizona and everything. That's going to be huge for me. So I would look for a guy who could maybe be a leadoff hitter in a pinch, have some speed, cover a lot of ground in the outfield, center field specifically. These guys can definitely play the outfield, and I get like I'm with it that like defense doesn't matter all that much, but have a guy who can go in the eighth or ninth inning and just close out the game for us in center field, make sure no balls get past him, stop some doubles, that type of thing is what I'm looking for in the outfield if they're going to go for an outfielder.
Okay. I mean, honestly, you've convinced me. I think that that's fine. I mean, I still worry a little bit about depth in the middle of the infield, but I guess in a pinch, truly, like Steer can play second base as well. I believe he's gotten some time there, so not that that would be the likely spot. I guess they do technically have two shortstops now with Espinal, so maybe you might be right, honestly. That makes a lot more sense. We'll have to see. There are going to be guys who will be cut very soon who are perfect for exactly what Joe's talking about. Like that is normally one of the, I think, easier cuts to make is really strong defensive guys who have no bat. So the Reds could definitely use somebody like that. We got to go into injuries. Holy crap. We got a ton of injuries. We're trying to book our way through this as much as possible. There was a lot to go through this week just because it's opening day. So yeah, opening day. Woo! Very exciting. We continue on. Injury updates. TJ Friedel, 6 to 8 weeks, kind of what I was expecting. There was the chance that that sprain was extremely mild and it would only be 2 weeks. Joe and I both talked about that. That seemed damn near impossible, to be honest with you, at that point. So they're thinking, but they're saying it's going to be closer to 6. They said he's already moving his wrist without much, like, too much pain. So that's actually a pretty good sign. So that would put him back technically since the start of his injury. I think he'd be coming back in the middle of May-ish, middle to end of May. If that's the case, truly, that'd be huge for the Reds. That would be great. I mean, we can survive 1 month without TJ Friedel, but much more than that, and I think we are in trouble territory. So, and it's not because I don't believe in who will ultimately be starting in center field, but it's more just because he is such a great glue guy and very important to the overall, composition of this team. So, Really love that. Next, Brandon Williamson. He's still got that sore shoulder. They said he's not even throwing a baseball right now, but they're being very aggressive in his treatment. To me, I think that he's really like just maybe fatigued or something like that. He has dealt with this problem in the past, and that's what kept him off of, I believe it was the Mariners roster at the time when, or it might have even been the Reds. I can't remember. It was 2022. So we'll have to see when he's going to come back. I almost wonder genuinely if they're just kind of waiting for him to they're just giving him a ton of time and then just put him back in the rotation later throughout the year because they anticipate somebody being hurt. I'm telling you, people don't want to admit it, but MLB finagles with the injury list more than any other sport, where they will fake injuries and give guys just time off when they need it. Lodolo is expected to be back on April 10th, so we will only miss him for 2 starts. As of right now, they're expecting him to make 2 AAA starts. He's going to be starting a minor league game tomorrow, actually, so Tuesday the 26th. And everything goes well there. He'll start the season in AAA on a rehab assignment and then be back up on April 10th. Then I would expect a lot of pieces to move because that's when I believe Nick Martinez will go into the bullpen, unless if he is just unbelievable, like perfect game type level guy for us in those 2 starts. Unfortunately, Edwin Arroyo as well, torn labrum to end the season. Only 20 years old. It's so weird. I actually saw this happen to one of my kids in baseball. It was either last year or the year before when we were, when I was coaching. It was a dive into first base that tore his labrum. It apparently happens kind of regularly after I've looked it up. Like, it's a semi-common injury. So pretty disappointing that that's the way it goes. But again, he's only 20. He wasn't making the Reds roster anyways right now. And I actually think it kind of gives the Reds a little bit of extra time to figure out what to do with him. So sad for him, but glad he's getting that taken care of. Matt McClain is getting a second opinion on his shoulder injury. He will miss the start of the season. I think it's likely going to be longer. We'll talk about that here in a second. Ian Jabot also on the injured list to start the season, but he is progressing well. Alex Young has back tightness. He's likely going to be ready for mid-April. And then obviously we have Noelvi Marte suspended. I do want to take a second and talk about McClain, Joe. I've texted you this. I've been worried about this. I think he also may have a partially torn labrum. Just the sound of the way that they're talking. It's generally an injury that can heal on its own. I can only speak from my personal experience. I tore my labrum, and what happens is the labrum flap goes back into place. So it's technically still torn, but it is able to heal over time without needing surgery. But it can tear again. It kind of just depends on, different things, and that may be why he's getting a second opinion, because if it is a torn labrum, he could also be out for the season. That's my biggest fear, but maybe it's just because I'm an anxious mess half the time. So I'm leaning on you to hopefully maybe alleviate some of my anxiety over this injury.
I mean, I don't know how long he's going to be out with this one, but we are getting to the point where you have to wonder about his ability to stay healthy. He's only been up for 2 years now. He's had several injuries. Missed the start of spring training with an oblique injury that was the same oblique, but a different injury is what they said this year. So I'm concerned long term more than short term with this one. We need to have the guy on the field. He's so good and so important to this lineup. And honestly, our best hitter last year. So we need him to be good. When guys start getting hurt this early in their career, that wear and tear builds on them, and that scares me more than anything. So I will alleviate the short-term concerns you have, because I do think maybe he can come back, but the long-term for me is where I'm kind of more worried about it. We need the guy on the field really badly.
The only thing that I will say to that, because I think you're right, is generally oblique injuries, since they're soft tissue injuries, are ones that are just like, they're pretty easy to kind of figure out. I know obliques are important in baseball, but that doesn't really concern me as much as like, because that's something you can build muscle towards and kind of, solve that with time. Shoulder injuries and more significant ones like that are the ones that worry me. That's especially one where, like, in my opinion, if they think that surgery is a possibility, they should just do it, because it will make it stronger long term. It will, help him, I think, potentially even in the short term, because if it's not like a super serious tear, he could theoretically be back for a playoff push. I know that's not what Reds fans want to hear. I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I really do. I hope that maybe it's just general like shoulder soreness that could be like, maybe there's like bone spurs or something like that in there, and they would need surgery to go take them out, or they're asking him if he can play through it. Because technically, even with a torn labrum, that's why I'm thinking it's that, is you can technically play through it, right? And he is playing second base. Um, Maybe they DH him a lot more and use him at second sparingly. I don't really know, but it's just there's just this core belief in me right now that it's a partially torn labrum, and that scares me. It could also be a rotator cuff injury, which could be technically even worse than a torn labrum. So we'll have to see. I don't know. We'll keep you guys abreast. If you haven't been watching our shorts, we're putting out as many shorts as we can about injuries, different roster moves, stuff like that. So once something's a little more known, which I expect to happen soon, although I had heard recently that he hasn't even gone to go get his second opinion yet. Apparently he's kind of just taking his time. I can't remember. I saw the tweet about it and it was like, yeah, surprisingly he hasn't done it yet. They haven't even scheduled it. So I'm like, what are we waiting for? Start of the season's on Thursday. Let's go get him in there and figure it out. But I'm not a doctor. We'll have to see. All right. Finally, we are moving to opening day. Here are the projected lineups, and opening day starter is going to be Frankie Montas. That's already been discussed. We have not discussed that. I think we will here in just a second, but it has already been decided like about a week and a half ago or so. He will be getting the opening day start. The lineup, my opinion for the lineup, again, you can check out my short on this, but I believe it's going to be Jonathan India leading off at second, Ellie at shortstop, Steer in left field, the Candyman at third base, CES at first base, Jake Fraley in right field, Tyler Stevenson at catcher, Nick Martini at DH, and Will Benson rounding it out in center field. Mark Sheldon recently put out, or there was an article that was put out today on MLB.com. He changed it just slightly. He had Fraley batting fourth with Candy fifth and CES sixth. So pretty much the same as mine. I think Candy should be batting fourth more than Fraley, but, whatever. Joe, what are your thoughts on the lineup? And then we'll talk about Montas as the starter.
Yeah, putting together a lineup, I was doing it before we recorded. It's tough with this team because I think there's different skill sets that most teams don't have and different ways they have to get it together. Mm-hmm. So I'm of the opinion you start India in the leadoff spot. Yeah. When we took him out of the leadoff spot last year, that's where things started going south. They messed with his confidence. Start him in the leadoff spot. If it doesn't go well, then move him down the order. I'm also of the opinion that I would not have Candelario fourth. I don't think he's a cleanup hitter in any sense of the word, but I do think that's what they end up doing, Rob. So I don't think you're wrong for predicting that. I think that's what they end up doing. I think he's more of in my opinion, more of a two-hitter. He's more of a doubles hitter, not much of a home run guy. I get that we're not going to put him at two because we have a lot of young talent. I'd move him down the lineup two, maybe make him sixth or so. But no, the rest of it's fine. I mean, I think Ellie and Steer, 2, 3, probably in that range. I think CES has a chance to be 4, 5, or 6, which is fine. Fraley 4, 5, or 6 too. I would prefer those guys to be higher than Candelario because of their ability to hit for power. But I get that we don't really care about the Reds. Haven't had a really good power hitter in years in terms of home run total since Gino. Gino, really. And we saw Gino, he used to be a doubles hitter, and then he hit home runs with us, and then he stopped hitting doubles because he was striking out so much. So that's the only thing I'll have to say. I do like Benson in the 9-hole. Candelario, just not your typical 4-hitter. I do think that David Bell still probably puts him there, though.
So here's the only argument I'll have against you is both Gino and actually Castellanos, too, were doubles hitters because of how big the ballpark was, right? Especially when they were playing in Detroit. Candelario, obviously, like the Cubs, can either be a desolate place for home runs or you're going to hit one almost every time you hit one in the air, right? So you have that 50-50 depending on where the wind's coming from, especially last year. I just think that I think he's going to hit more home runs this year than we think. I also think that, honestly, I want a guy who's a better bat in fourth. I like Jake Fraley, but if I'm being honest, with Friedel healthy, Jake Fraley's not even in the opening day lineup for me. Just going to be completely honest with you because I think it's still Spencer Steer in left. I think it is Will Benson in right at that point, and I think it's Friedel in center. So, and it's just because I think I just think that Will Benson's a better player. I mean, hell, somebody on MLB Network, don't know who, don't know why they did this, but they put him in their top 10 right fielders currently in baseball. Wild to me, to be honest with you, even as a Reds fan. But I just think that Fraley's a great bat. obviously, and he's been great for us, and he can bat fourth for sure. I just think Candy's a better bat. Honestly, truthfully, if we didn't have to do the lefty righty thing, I think CES is the long term solution at the four spot as of right now. But I like him batting fifth with a little extra protection. We're just nitpicking here, to be fair, by the way. Literally, these three guys, Candy, CES, and Fraley, with the way the team is built right now, they will be batting in those 4, 5, 6 spots, almost guaranteed.
I don't know. I think this could be a thing where it needs to change quickly this year. I don't think with the way, like I say, India starts off bad in the leadoff spot, you might need to move someone up to the leadoff spot. I think Candelario fits more of what I want in a two-hitter. The speed isn't necessarily there, but he just hits so many doubles. He can move guys over. That's what I think his perfect role is a two-hitter if he's hitting well, but he's also a 248 career hitter. I would rather give it to guys like Fraley and Benson, who proved it last year. They could hit better than that. Can also hit for more power, in my opinion. I do expect more home runs from Candy as well this year, especially with the ballpark. But I don't want to get into another Suarez situation where the career gets ruined because you he starts trying to hit home runs, and that really puts a hole in your swing in different ways. And I'm with you as well. I think CES is the long-term option at the four spot. That could be really good if he hits the way he did in spring. Then it could change really quick. I think he could be the fourth hitter depending on how you stack the lineup, because this is all predicated on India batting leadoff and Ellie being behind him. But if things change and Ellie needs to be leadoff for a bit, or Ellie needs to move down to 3, whatever have you, that changes everything. So I would have moved Candelario down. I'm not too upset with starting him there. You just signed him this offseason, give him a chance to prove himself, and maybe he does hit better in our ballpark than he did in Detroit, in Washington, and in Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too the other thing you got to remember is he's a switch hitter. So I like him. I want to find him a consistent place to bat. If it's 2, if it's 4, if it's 5, 6, I don't really care. Wherever they end up slotting him in, because they signed him to play every day. He needs to be there every day, and having him as a switch hitter, I think, is going to make it a really nice option for the Reds. Obviously, they'll be facing a lefty in Game 2. I think in that situation, I'm almost certain Steer or Candelario or CES are batting in that 4 spot in that regard. So we'll have to see how David Bell maybe mixes and matches the lineup left and righty. And he's got a lot of options. I think we're one of the only teams in baseball that have 2 switch hitters in your top 5 hitters, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's very rare nowadays to have even one. So pretty nice for the Reds to have that option. Let's talk about Montas here. The guy's coming off of a significant injury. He has looked really good. His fastball is electric, a lot faster than I was expecting it to be after those surgeries. He says that he's feeling really good. His last start was pretty solid. He really only struggled in that last inning, and I think that's kind of to be expected. I think he's going to be a more 5 or 6 inning pitcher guy. I'd be very shocked to see him going 7 innings, at least this early in the season. So, if the wheels start to fall off on that third time through the rotation, then that is what it is. But do you have, I will admit, I was really surprised that Hunter Green wasn't the opening day starter. I'll be honest. I really kind of worry about that, because it can do 2 things, right? It can either help his confidence because, he doesn't have that pressure and he's able to kind of, just do his own thing. But at the same time, he's been pegged as the guy for Cincinnati. And I don't know that confidence has really been an issue for him necessarily. I think it's just more of him kind of figuring his way from being completely just a thrower to actually a pitcher. And we've seen that over the last few years where he's gone from, I'm just going to throw real fast, to he's learning new pitches, he's trying new things, and maybe because of that splitter and that curveball that they want to give him a little bit of an extra, chance. There's that conspiracy theory you were talking about as well. I don't really know, but I will admit it was a big surprise to me to not see Hunter Green as the opening day starter.
It was a surprise to me as well, because this is the most important thing. If Frankie Montas comes in and has the worst year ever and he was a terrible signing, it doesn't matter, right? He's gone next year, he's gone in the next couple of years. This is your guy. You need to give him confidence. I would have had him as the number 1 starter. I don't think there's any additional pressure that outweighs how much you motivating factor you get from being the number 1 guy, right? So there is pressure. Yeah. I'm saying that I don't think it outweighs anything. I would say the good news is I think that he can have a good start against this Nationals lineup. It is not very good.
No.
So get Montas started and then give Hunter Green the ball the next start. Could be a good recipe to have 2 guys pick up some easy wins. And that's why I kind of think I would have let the young guys in the top of the order here. We
Yeah, this is
have
a good rotation to go
three
against.
game three guys against 3 games against the Nationals, which don't have a good don't have really good lineup. And then you go to the Phillies, which is part of the conspiracy theory. So Hunter Green starting the second game of the year means he misses the Phillies series, and then he comes back home and pitches against the Mets at home, which is going to be a little bit easier than pitching against the Phillies
Yeah.
roster as well. So that's kind of the conspiracy. I'm okay with Montas starting. I'm okay with this if Hunter Green is not affected, but I would have thought like, hey man, this is your guy. You have to build the confidence, and if it doesn't work with Frankie Montas, like in the big scheme, who cares? In this season, kind of like okay, that kind of stinks. I hate it, but that's kind
Yeah.
of how I read it. Was just I would have given the ball to Hunter Green. Just let him cook.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he's starting to feel his curveball. He's starting to feel his splitter. I think I will tell you that he already has some of the best stuff in baseball when he's healthy and when he's throwing strikes. So if he can add those two pitches to his arsenal, I mean, he's truly going to be something fun to watch every game. And I just hope that they instill in him that like he's amazing, he's going to figure it out, they're going to make sure they get him there, all that kind of stuff. So we'll go quickly through the Nationals batting lineup real quick. CJ Abrams at shortstop, Lane Thomas in right field, Eddie Rosario in left field, Joey Meneses at DH, Joey Gallo at first base, Keibert Ruiz at catcher, Nick Senzel at third base, Luis Garcia at second, and Victor Robles, the former top prospect, in center field. This lineup's a little better than I thought it was going to be, just mostly because they have a lot of, I think, there are guys who are interesting to me. Lane Thomas hit the Reds really well last year. He was just a good player in general. They got him from the Cardinals. He looks to be kind of like a key piece for them that I don't know that they were expecting. Joey Meneses as well has been very surprising. He's a solid hitter. Our old friend Nick Senzel, I think he's in a good spot for where he needs to be. Keibert Ruiz, also a top prospect with Abrams and Robles at different points. And Garcia, I think, to a certain degree as well. So this lineup is full of young potential. I can see how Nationals fans would be excited about this team. And if I'm the Reds, there are just a couple guys you just don't pitch to. I think you try to pitch around Lane Thomas and Joey Gallo and see if the rest of the lineup can kind of beat you. And it's not that I think Joey Gallo's a great hitter or anything. It's just that if he makes contact, even in early spring in Cincinnati, he is going to hit it into the river. So, if you've got guys on base, you pitch around him. If you don't, just go right at him. Don't worry about it. And he will chase things. So, it's an interesting lineup. It is a really interesting lineup. There are a lot of really weird pieces. I will real quickly note before you jump in too, they expect Jesse Winker also to get a lot of time in the outfield on this team as well. So they're like the former Reds. This is like what they were doing when they first came up as the Nationals. I remember them having a bunch of old, former Reds players, and now it kind of feels the same way because we'll talk about Josiah Gray here in a second as well. But what do you think of this lineup?
Yeah, I don't think it's very good to start. You're right; it has some potential for the future.
Yeah.
This is, like I said, it's a perfect series for us to start with, especially given the injuries and everything. I'm with you. I think the biggest thing you have to watch out for is if there's runners on base, just walk Joey Gallo.
Yep.
Some of the younger guys, I don't think will be ready to hit in these situations quite yet. Gallo also strikes out a lot, so you
Yep.
can take that risk if you want. But if it's a close game, just put him on base. This is a lineup that, like I said, I think it could be good down the stretch. But we also have guys like Robles has never really found his footing.
Yep.
We have Senzel, who obviously couldn't start for us as much as I do like him. Didn't have an everyday role.
True.
I'm wishing him and Winker the best, but and Winker too has had some rough years as well. So
Yeah.
I wish them the best. I hope the Nationals make a little run in the NL East this year. I think this is the perfect opening series for us, which means we'll be 0-3 at the end of it. But that's all right.
For sure. No, that's exactly what I'm saying. This lineup. I see there are scary things in this lineup. Abrams is a top prospect. He's like they have a lot of good young talent, even as much as we do. I think that these lineups almost mirror each other a little bit to a certain degree. I just think that we have better overall hitters, more consistent ones. So, it's going to be whether or not we catch the Nationals in a lull or if they're streaking. If they're streaking, that top five and even Ruiz honestly could hit the absolute crap out of the ball. So we'll have to see. We're also going to be going up against former Reds top prospect in Josiah Gray. For those of you who may not remember, he was very young still at the time. The Reds traded him in that deal with the Dodgers that included Kyle Farmer, Yasiel Puig, Alex Wood, and the infamous Matt Kemp. So definitely interesting. He has really found himself. He's been a top guy who just couldn't find his home. Now feels like the Nationals have really kind of attached themselves to him. He had a decent year last year. Record doesn't matter much in baseball, but he did go 8-13. 3.91 ERA is what I'm looking at. That was pretty good. 143 strikeouts to 159 innings pitched, almost a strikeout an inning, which is generally what you want from a top level starter. He is prone to give up the long ball, though, and he walks pretty much a batter almost every other inning, so control's a bit of an issue. The long ball is a bit of an issue. It's stuff that he's been working on. I think Josiah Gray is a really strong pitcher, and I think he's going to be a lot better even this year, but if you were going to catch him, now's the right time to catch him. Opening day against his former club. There's a lot of old Reds that are going to be making their way back to Great American Ballpark on Thursday. And I'm really interested to see what Josiah Gray has heading into the series and what I think the Reds have planned for him.
I am as well. This is the Nationals' best chance to get a win in the series.
Mm-hmm.
We have, Jai Gray's by far the best pitcher. We have a guy who is coming off an injury and Montas starting. We kind of don't know what we're going to get, even with spring training being, there's some good moments there for him. I think this will be good for them. I know he's prone to give up home runs as well, but I think he can control it, especially it's not the summer months yet, so the ball's not flying like it usually does. If he pitches well, they can get a win in the first one, and hopefully the Reds can take the next two because the pitchers kind of go down in quality pretty severely after that, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. The next two, and we're going to try to do this with every series, we'll at least look at the starting pitchers. How deeply we'll go into them, we don't really know yet. We haven't gotten into the dog days where it's going to be 6 games a week, maybe even 7 sometimes. So the next two are Patrick Corbin and Jake Irvin. Patrick Corbin, a former NL Cy Young, not award winner, but I don't think, but he was in the talks for a couple years there. The last 4 years have been horrible. I mean, he has struggled mightily. 10-15, 5.2 ERA. He hasn't had a below 4.6 ERA since 2018. So he has just not been great. He's an innings eater though, 180 innings. I mean, he will gobble them right up. He has times where he looks really good. He is more of a control pitcher. He doesn't walk a ton of guys, but I think honestly against this Reds lineup, like there are dudes like CES who I think are going to just eat Patrick Corbin for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, it's not going to be great for him. Second game, Jake Irvin, a younger guy as well, who's kind of finding his way. Last year was his first full year, and I think actually really his only year of MLB action. 3-7, 4.6 ERA, 99 strikeouts, and 121 innings pitched. 54 walks, but also is home run prone. I think he gave up like 22 home runs or something like that in 21 innings pitched, which is it's pretty terrible, to be honest with you. That is really bad. So, they're obviously the Nationals are expecting some of these guys to take steps forward. Everybody has seen Patrick Corbin now for over a decade. We know what he is. I think they're giving him that second start out of respect for what he has been and how he helped them win that championship. Sometimes it feels like, but he is not a great pitcher anymore. I will say, like, my vibes coming into this are if the Reds younger guys can kind of just delete everything else and just kind of just do their thing, right? And if the starting pitchers can get at least 4 quality innings, that's all I want. 4 out of 5. Like they can have a bad fifth inning. That is what it is. We can take him out early. We got a plethora of bullpen guys, like even down to the minor leagues at this point. So I think it's really important for the Reds to get off to a good start in the season. You got to try to 2-1 as many 3-game series as you can with all the injuries that you have as well. So this is a team that, I mean, it doesn't get a lot easier than this team. There are lineups that may not be as good, but they have better pitching. You kind of mix those things in and out. The Nationals bullpen isn't really that great either. So this is a series that it sounds bad, but like to get off on the right foot, it's a long season, but a 2-1 or a 3-0 to start this season would be huge for this Reds team, especially before they head into Philadelphia, which is a notably great team, obviously, and not really dealing with too many injuries. So I don't want to put a lot of pressure. It's opening day. It's 3 games out of 162, but I do think that we were very, very much hashtag blessed with our starting, year team that we have to play against.
I am as well. I'll say something I'm going to be saying a lot on this podcast throughout the summer is it's going to be very important to get to their bullpen with day
Yes.
one. So Josiah Gray,
Yep.
if we can hit him day one, get him out of the game, is have them start using the bullpen. This becomes I mean, let's say it, it's a bad team. Like
Yeah.
they're going to have pitchers, starters, like you said, Patrick Corbin. Love him for what he did for the Nationals for the World Series. It's way past that time.
Yeah.
Jake Irvin hasn't proven himself yet. Getting better, it's fine. He's getting better. But like
Yeah.
then you have those guys going into the games again. Colder months, you're going to take your pitchers out of the lineup a little bit quicker too. Go to the bullpen and have the bullpen get worn down because, as you said, Rob, their bullpen's not that notable either. So that's the key to me. If they want to go 2-1 or 3-0, start off hot. Montas is not going to be perfect for the Reds, but
No.
get to Josiah Gray in the early parts, and then get to the bullpen. Again, I'll say it a million times this summer. We'll have to have like a button or something we press every time I say it. But that's the key to the series right there. If you want to be 2-1 or 3-0 at the end of this because you're playing a bad team, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean that's generally I think one of the biggest things in baseball that people just seemingly don't talk about is if you get to the bullpen early, regardless of how good the bullpen is, they're taxed, especially like by the middle of the season. So that is something we're going to be watching for without a doubt. I will say, I'm hoping. I don't know. Do we want to do predictions? Do you want to predict or not? Are you feeling it or not?
First of all, good point. Because the Reds had a good bullpen last year, that their stats came down because they were taxed and David Bell used them.
Way too
We'll
much.
talk about that later because it'll happen.
Yeah.
But no, we were talking about predictions for the series, prediction for the year. What are we talking here, Rob?
You know what? Let's do a little bit of both. Oh man, we're really running up
Quick,
against the time. I think we'll quickly do both. Let's do the series,
quick.
and then we'll
Yeah.
do hitter, pitcher, relief pitcher, and we'll just say overall team MVP. Quickly,
Okay.
no
Okay.
description.
Well,
just
we're
who
gonna
they
go
are.
two. All right, 2-1 for the series. I do think something will go wrong at some point. Even though this should, again, Talenton would be 3-0. I think overall for the season, I will say they win 87 games. I'm gonna take
Nice.
the over right now. I'm gonna be optimistic to start and see where things fall. That would put them right in the cusp of the playoffs. Some years you make it, some years you don't with 87 wins, even with the expanded playoffs. And then I will say team MVP. I will go.
Oh, you cut out, Joe. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Spencer Steer is the MVP for me. Top pitcher, I'm going to go Hunter Green. Hopefully, he uses this as fuel. And then top relief pitcher. I mean, I'm not going to take Diaz. That's too easy. I'll take Ian Jabot when he comes back, baby. I loved what he did last year.
You
I
did.
like him a lot. So those are my three.
Ian
Those are my
Jabot is
three.
your Tony Santion, except he's probably better. But we'll go there. I like it. All right, I'm actually gonna pick 1-2. I just think the Reds are just so bad. They start off the season, it feels like every year, just really slow. They went into that Pirate series a couple years ago where they were clearly the better team, and I think they went 0-3. So I just think that they're a slower team. I think they play better generally in the dog days when people mostly aren't playing well. Well, not maybe even the dog days, maybe a little bit before then. Generally, like late May through July is when David Bell's teams are pretty hot, like when they're playing their best baseball. So I think it's going to be a 1-2 series just because I think they'll get to Patrick Corbin. But I just have this feeling that like Josiah Gray is going to dice him up, and then I just think that it's going to be a slugfest in Game 3 with Martinez. As much as I like him, I just think that it's his first time pitching a Great American Ballpark. You have two guys also pitching a Great American Ballpark for the first time ever, and I think that'll be a bit surprising in good and bad ways, right? Like when you see a ball that looks like a fly ball in Colorado or in San Diego for Martinez, or even in Yankee ballpark that plays a little bit bigger, for Montas. Like Reds ballpark does, Great American doesn't play that way, so I think they may give up a long ball or two, and they'll have to kind of readjust the way they do things. So that's where I'm at. I'm actually still going to pick them, though, to win 88 games. That's kind of where I was expecting them to be. So I'm right around the same ballpark as you are in that one. I do think that'll be enough to win the division, too, by the way. I think this division is just going to be a bunch of barely above average teams just beating the snot out of each other all year. So we'll have to see how that goes. Then my hitter, or I guess team MVP, I'm actually going to end up picking Jonathan India. I think if he stays healthy, he's going to be really important to them. He may not end up being the highest batting average or the most home runs or the least amount of errors on the team, but I think his flexibility and his leadership are going to be absolutely huge for him. Second, I think hitter wise, just overall, I'm going to actually go with CES. I think he's going to be really important for this team as well. So I'm going to go with him there. Starting pitcher wise, I'm going to go Andrew Abbott. I think he's going to be really, really crucial for this team. His health, and I think, generally the way he throws the ball, health shouldn't be too much of an issue. He's not a flamethrower. Generally, you don't get as many injuries in that way. He's more of a control and location guy, and I think that those kind of guys are generally really consistent. I think that that's what we're going to need. Bullpen-wise, I can't believe that I'm going to say this, but I actually think I'm going to go... wait, I'm changing my mind. Give me 2 seconds. No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to call Brent Suter. I think just because that, I'm not picking like a Diaz or Sims. Like, I think that they're generally going to be our best guys, but I wanted to pick somebody else, like you said. And I think that Suter, mostly just because he's pitching for his hometown team, that is going to do a lot for him. And he is a ground ball guy. Like, he is a known ground ball guy. And I think that that plays so well in Great American Ballpark. And I think is going to be extremely important for them going through this season. He had a great year last year. I don't see why he couldn't have another great year this year with all the other factors coming in. So those are my guys. You got any final comments before we sign off? I know this was a longer episode, guys, but we had a lot to go over for opening day, which is, again, Thursday afternoon. Get yourselves ready.
We'll just add Brent Suter to the guys, a list of your guys, Tony Santillan and TJ Antone. Add them all together. Those are the three Rob loves the most. No, I think it's fine. I think, like I said, I'm excited for some baseball. It's impressive that you were picking the Reds to be 1-2. I don't think that you've ever had lower expectations, even for a single series or single game, than I have had for a team that we both cheer for. So that's interesting.
Well, I'm either going to be right or I'm going to be wrong, and I'm going to be happy. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this right now.
So that's not what you actually think. All right.
No, that is what I actually think. I do believe that, but I'm just saying I would love for me to be wrong, because then I'll be a happy boy. But I just think that I really do believe that they're just a slow starting team, man. They really are. I mean, and it's tough. Like, I mean, I'd love for that to change. They have a bunch of new young guys, obviously. Most of these guys weren't even on the roster last year, right? The only people who are starting this year who were on the opening day roster last year are Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, and Will Benson. Or wait, no, Benson came up a little bit like 2 weeks afterwards, right? I'm talking about in the starting lineup. I think those are the only two guys who were on the Reds' active roster at the beginning of last year. I can't remember if Benson came up later or not, but I know he didn't start opening day.
I think Steer would have been up too.
Was Steer? Oh, yeah, you're right. Steer was up. Sorry. Brain farted. So, yeah. So we have three guys of the 9. Maybe Benson. I can't remember. But, no Nick Martini. Oh, wait. Was Fraley too? Yeah. You know what? I'm messing this up.
He's on a team, yeah.
Yeah. Most of the guys were all over the place. My point is still that they have a lot of young guys who maybe will be able to get out to a hot start, but the teams generally don't. That's all. I messed that part up. Sorry. Brain farted there.
It's going to be... If they go 1-2 in the first series and then they go to the Philly...
They could be 2-4. It's
going to be very tough for them.
Yeah.
With the injuries they have, I think it's going to be very tough. If they can't beat teams like the Nationals at home, very tough to get to your 88 win projection, buddy. But I'm hoping the same thing you are, that you are wrong. But we'll see.
We will see. We will see. Like I said, it's only one series. They could just as easily go 3-0. We just don't know. We haven't seen them play yet. So we'll have to see kind of how things go. We're definitely looking forward to it. Let us know again in the comments below what you guys think. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on just any of the other things that you've thought of for this. We really do appreciate it. It helps us with the algorithm quite a bit as we're trying to grow this new channel. So we really do appreciate all your guys' support. We appreciate all of you who are listening as well on Spotify. Make sure to hit us up on Twitter if you guys have different thoughts as well that you want us to discuss. Joe and I are on there pretty regularly talking about the Reds too. So we'll make sure to get out some different shorts for you guys this week. And enjoy opening day. And with that, we'll catch you guys on the next one.